I am the lineman. I don't know why I'm starting like that. Yes, I am. But I am back making a terrible car-related podcast. It's been a while. I checked. I went back. 3rd of May, I think, was the last time I recorded one, which is what, 10 weeks ago, give or take. Yeah, I just that last episode, which coincidentally enough was episode 13. Unlucky for some. Was piss poor. I'd obviously just fallen out of flow, and I wasn't too well at the time, and it's terrible. Don't even attempt to go back and listen to it. Even not that don't think anyone was planning on, but yeah, I fell out of flow, and then I just stopped making podcasts, and then just life continued on churning, and well, yeah. Yeah, so I'm back. The only really reason I'm doing one now today as well is because I have the time to do one. Because I'm not in work, because I'm supposed to be on jury duty, but due to ongoing legal arguments, we were dismissed for the day today. So I have some spare time. I'm not allowed to talk about the case for obvious reasons. All I'll say is it's pretty grim. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I'm currently broadcasting from the inside of a Mark 7.5, if you will, the facelifted Mark 7 VW Golf, which on a subjective level, it's not a fancy Golf, it's not a GTI, it's not an OR, it's a 1.5 TSI, automatic, grey, both on the inside and outside Golf. So on a subjective level, it's as dull as ditch water. It's a Golf is the most predictable and therefore dull choice I think anyone could make, but for good reason. Because on an objective level, this is a very good car. It's a 7.5. I think it's on a 201 plate or 202. It's very much. It belongs to my brother and his wife, and when they bought it, it's very much a run-out model because the Mark 8 was actually on sale when they bought this. So they got a good deal on it, and admittedly, it's got everything you'd need. It's got dual zone climate control. Being the 7.5, some of it's on touchscreen, but most stuff, like the dual zone climate control, is all knobs and buttons, which are of a nice quality. And even stuff for the infotainment on the screen, like there's a volume knob, and there's another knob which I don't know what the other one's for. I don't know. I turn it on. There's steering wheel controls. So again, steering wheel controls are actual buttons, not haptic feedback like they were on the Mark 8 Golf that I had on rent in Stuttgart a few months ago, which I talked about in a previous podcast. Yeah, it's heated seats, automatic wipers, automatic headlights, electric windows around. It's got a leather interior, black. Everything's black. The trim is black. All the quality of materials is nice. Everything is like soft touch. Everything's screwed together really well. Some scratchy stuff lower down, but it's not really the stuff you touch. The steering wheel is leather. It's got laser guided cruise control, which I find it's actually quite interesting. So it does the normal stuff, follows, accelerates, blah blah blah. One thing I didn't realise it did until I started driving around in this for a week is when you're stopped in traffic. So you come to a stop start kicks in, it automatically applies the handbrake, but it knows, and very very intuitively, it knows when the car in front is about to move away, and it'll start up the car for you, and away you go. Yeah, it's been faultless in the week I've been driving it, other than the DSG gearbox, whatever generation DSG is, it's a 7-speed. Beautiful gearbox, I must say. If you're like, okay, I'm not into automatics because I'm a car bore like most people watching this. If there's a manual option, I'll still take the manual gearbox. But again, on an objective level, for someone who just wants a car, for day-to-day use, it is brilliant. It's super smooth. It's always in the right gear. There's just a drive, which essentially I suppose is eco, and then you can flick it into a sport. You can flick it into manual mode, So the one thing this car doesn't have is steering wheel mounted paddles for shifting, which I would like, because you can shift manually with the stick, but if you're someone like me, like if you're anyone from Gen X backwards, or like me, an elder millennial, you will have grown up in the era of super touring cars and the heyday of WRC cars, where with a sequential gearbox, you pull the lever back to go up gears, and you push it forward to go down the gears. But with the DSG gearboxes, it's the other way round, which is just unacceptable. Bullshit. But that could all be solved by just having paddles on the steering wheel, which I said this one doesn't have. The only thing that has gone wrong, and this only happened, I think it was yesterday or the day before, stopped at a set of lights, and I know you don't actually have to do this with modern automatics technically, and especially with these DSGs, and especially when this will just go into stop start anyway, when you stop traffic. But when I'm using an automatic gearbox, it's just my natural reaction when I'm stopped to just knock it into neutral. So I did that at the set of lights. Lights went green. I knock it back into drive and put my foot in the accelerator, and it just screamed revs. I was like, what the hell? Okay, I just knocked it back into neutral again and then back into drive, and everything was fine. But it was enough of a faff, for a couple of seconds to go by for the person behind me to beep the horn and stuff. Yeah, odd. Other than that, it's been faultless. But yeah, that was just a small inconvenience. I'll take a picture of the car, not for any interest value, but just to highlight how dull and grey it is. But as I said, like for someone who just wants a car, which is all my brother and his wife want, they just want a good, reliable, well-equipped car. And when it comes to that, it's perfect. It drives. It's got a very neutral handling balance. It's not fast, but it's certainly not slow. It's economical. It's got it being this facelift, it's got the digital instrument cluster, which I prefer. Just normal dials and a little screen in the middle will be enough for me. But they work fine. They're very clear. You're a bit overloaded with information. Like you can have the digital speed, and then you can have the dial with the speed, revs, fuel consumption. Blah. There's just a lot going on the screen. I'd prefer just some analog dials and a simple screen in the middle. But look, that's the world we live in now. I'll stop talking about this golf now, because I've rambled on about it for several more minutes than I intended on. But what I really was getting around to is this was and will remain the high point for Volkswagen. Volkswagen obviously have decades of being arguably one of the best mass manufacturing car manufacturers of mostly the 20th century. The 21st has been, obviously this is a 21st century car, but of recent times Volkswagen have certainly taken a step backwards. Like the Mark 8, it's just not as good a car as this. Like mechanically they're quite similar, but like like all the touchscreen bullshit is awful. And the materials are much cheaper, and from what I've heard, they're certainly not as reliable because, well, Volkswagen have had to penny pinch. Dieselgate obviously was a big financial hit for the company, and then they've had to, like, any money they do have, they've had to try and pump into EVs. Speaking of that as well, obviously there was actually a recent news story about Volkswagen slowing down their production of electric vehicles, stuff like with staff being put on temporary leave, and some of the factories being put on pause. I don't think that's necessarily any highlight on a trend on the slowing in uptake of electric vehicles by the consumer, or any kind of shift from the manufacturers at large producing electric vehicles. Although the synthetic fuel argument certainly is gathering pace, which is obviously something and I'm sure anyone listening to this will be quite enthusiastic about, because we do love a bit of suck, squeeze, bang, blow. But also just the whole, keeping what's already on the road going would be a good move. And obviously the infrastructure is there. You don't have to do anything to cars to make them run on synthetic fuel. Anyway, what I'm saying, I don't think Volkswagen. I think more the reason Volkswagen are pulling back on their EV production is because I think they're getting wholeheartedly trounced by their competitors from Asia. Like Hyundai and Kia are just gone next level. Even with their combustion cars, but when it comes to electric vehicles, I don't think anyone can actually touch them. Certainly in the mainstream world. I haven't driven one, but I sat in an Ioniq 6, which I think is a good looking car, along with the Ioniq 5. I think they're both cool looking cars, striking if nothing else. But inside the Ioniq 6, it's just it's a funky looking interior. But again, like where Volkswagen have fallen down now with penny pinching, everything works. Now everything is still in touchscreen, which is bullshit. A lot of manufacturers, stuff that's come out in the last couple of months, there does seem to be a shift back to buttons, which is a good thing. We'll still have touchscreens. Obviously, they're not going anywhere, but at least having like main controls, like stuff like HVAC and just stuff like volume controls and buttons on steering wheels, stuff like that. Just some key features need to be on buttons. Stuff like I was watching Matt Pryor on Autocar did a video of the Lotus Electra, which I might talk about in further detail later on. Stuff like moving the position of the air vents is in like a sub menu in the touchscreen. Like that's just what's wrong with just, I don't know if you can hear that, but like just a little slider and a little up and down. There's no way that putting all that in a touchscreen is in any way cheaper or more efficient than just because the vents are there, and like the ability for them to move has to be engineered into the vent. Why not, like, even if you have the electric option in the touchscreen, why not just have the manual option there as well? I don't know, it's ridiculous. I'm going completely off topic. Where I was going with that was this Mark 7.5 Golf, I think, is going to go down in history as the peak of Volkswagen. It's a really, really good car. As much as people hate on the Mark 7 Golf R, but they only hate on it because it's become so ubiquitous. Because it was the fancy Golf of the era of cheap finance, so people bought them in their droves. It's undoubtedly an unbelievable car. The GTIs were good, and then just these run of the mill, everyday everyman Golfs, 1.5 TSI like I'm sitting in now. They're just good cars. And as I said, like the Mark 8 that replaced it is rubbish. Pretty much, I can't think of a Volkswagen product, regardless of their sub-brands, but we'll just stick with Volkswagen themselves at the moment. I can't think of a Volkswagen product that I would have any interest in at all, and that's currently on sale. And I don't see anything coming downstream that I'd want either. Anyway, I've rambled on a bit too much there. I went to go say I'm broadcasting from a Golf. And that was supposed to be that, and then I went on an absolute tangent. And I've already been how long have I been recording for? I've already been recording for nearly 14 minutes, and have said, as normal, I've said absolutely nothing of any relevance. So I'm going to move on to Formula One. Off the bat, he says nearly a quarter of an hour into a podcast. The reason I'm jumping straight into Formula One is because obviously there's some quite pertinent news which broke in the last 24 hours, and that is Red Bull / AlphaTauri have made the move to replace Nick de Vries with immediate effect with the fan favourite Daniel Ricciardo, which I predicted this quite a while ago. I was talking to a mate about it. Not like I'm some sort of savant. It was kind of, it doesn't take a lot to put the puzzle pieces together. But I said a few weeks ago that I was like, I think they're going to swap out Nick for Danny Rick. Liam Lawson was an option, but I think Liam Lawson wants to finish. He's currently in Super Formula in Japan, which is similar enough to F2. Do we call it Formula 2 now, don't we? Or is it called GP2? No, it's F2, isn't it? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But it's domestic to Japan only, but very competitive championship. Pierre Gasly was actually competing in that as well, before he got called up to AlphaTauri to replace. Did he replace Brendan Hartley? I think it was Brendan Hartley. He got taken away from that to replace Brendan. I think it was for the American Grand Prix in must have been 2018, 2019. And he was 1 point in the lead in the championship going into the final round, but then they pulled him into Formula 1, so therefore he didn't get to finish the championship. Although I think there was something to do with bad weather as well. It's like he missed a round anyway of Super Formula, and he meant he didn't get the championship. So it's just one championship he doesn't have on his record. And to be honest, not saying Gasly won't do things in the future, but I don't see Pierre Gasly being a Formula 1 world champion. But we won't get... I'm going off topic again. What we were talking about was Danny Rick replacing Nick de Vries. So I did say this to a friend a few months ago, and it has come to light. Normally, the Red Bull, AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, whatever name they're going under at the time, they usually wait until the summer break to make these snap driver changes. Now there's still a couple of races to go before the summer break. I think what kind of accelerated it was, well, one, I don't know what his exact title is, but Helmut Marko, big wig in Red Bull, the Red Bull fold, who makes these decisions on the drivers. He's been quite vocal about Nick's poor performances, and then Danny Rick, he's been working in the simulator for Red Bull, and sorry, I'm adjusting the armrest here, I don't know why. He's been doing work in the simulator, so I assume they have good data from that. He's done some private testing in some older cars for Red Bull, but also just a few hours before the announcement was made that he's replacing Nick de Vries, he was doing a Pirelli tyre test in the Red Bull, and from what we gather, so like this Pirelli tyre test, one, it was quite overcast and cold at Silverstone for the test, and the test was a new compound Pirelli were testing of tyre that will be the tyre that they're considering using and removing tyre blankets, which again is a whole other story I'll get into some other time. So it's a very different tyre, very different conditions as it was at the Grand Prix, but apparently the lap times that Danny Rick was putting in was only about 0.7 of a second slower than Max's pole time. Now, like, we don't know anything about the car, like, you know, what engine mode it was running, what fuel load was like, and again, the conditions were completely different, the tyre was completely different. But, you know, okay, like, it's hard to really judge where Perez was compared to Max at Silverstone, because Perez was out in fucking Q1 for, I think, possibly the fifth time in 6 races. We'll get back to Perez in a moment, but anyway, not a bad lap time regardless, for someone who's been out of the game for half a season, including pre-season testing. Again, I'm rambling on here a bit. What I'm trying to say is that it's harsh on Nick, but not unexpected. I was quite surprised when he got announced initially. It was a knee-jerk reaction after he put in a relatively decent performance in Monza last year. He managed to score a point and kind of walked over because he was filling in for Alex Albon. So I think it was appendicitis he had, Alex Albon. He was filling in for Alex Albon, and he managed to score a point and quite convincingly beat teammate Nicholas Latifi at the time. Now, not a high bar, admittedly, no offence to Nicholas Latifi, but not exactly the greatest racing driver to grace the F1 paddock. But also as well, Monza was a track that very much suited Williams, especially last season. High speed, high speed, because like Williams works well in low drag. It's it's the most low drag circuit on the calendar. Not, look, that he scored points. There was quite a lot of retirements in that race. Well, relatively speaking, in a modern Formula One race. But then that one performance, well, admittedly, was a good showing by Nick, but it was a knee-jerk reaction. Then, he scored points. I think he finished ninth, so we got 2 points. Right, let's sign him up for AlphaTauri next year. So who was in AlphaTauri last year that he's replaced? So Gasly went to Alpine, and then so there was a door open at AlphaTauri, and they gave it to Nick de Vries, which was a strange move because he wasn't part of the Red Bull Junior program or anything like that, and Red Bull have a lot of rising stars in their junior driver pool. Liam Lawson being one name, and then they have Iwasa, I can't remember his first name, Japanese driver, who's having a very good season in GP2 at the moment, F2, whatever they call it. So they knee-jerked and put Nick in. Now, I found it strange because Nick de Vries on paper, if you go on his Wikipedia page, it seems like he's greater than he is. Again, look, this is me saying it, just judging him on the high bar that is top level racing drivers. Obviously, he'd run rings around me any day of the week. Anyone who can qualify a Formula 1 car is quite obviously an incredible driver. But just in this high bar that is top level motorsport, like he won, I think it's the 2019 Formula 2 Championship. In his second season, I think. Second or possibly third. I should probably research this stuff more. Because, winning in your second season is, there's a lot of variables, but those who end up becoming absolute greats, who did compete in Formula 2, tend to have won F2 in their first season. George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, just a couple of names to throw out there. And also the competition that year wasn't exactly stellar. His closest rival and the person he beat to the F2 championship that year was Nicholas Latifi, who we've obviously just spoken about. So there was that. He's an F2 champion, but he was an F2 champion in a pretty weak season. And again, it wasn't his first season. Then if you go and look at it well, he won the Formula E Championship in 2020-21, because they used to, I don't know if they still do, but anyway, they used to do it midway through the year into the next year. And again, he won that in one Formula E is dreadful. I'm not going to go into the details of Formula E. You all know it's terrible. But anyway, going into the final round of that season, 13 drivers were in the running to win the championship. Him being one of them, but it could have been one of 13. And then the last race was just chaos. There was changeable weather. There were all sorts of incidents here and there. Now look, you have to be in it to win it, and he managed to get to the end of the race, while most of his other competitors didn't for various reasons. And that's how he won it. Now, there's so many variables again in Formula E as to how people score points and how people win races. There was fan boost, and there's different ways you can deploy the electric energy and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, he won. He was very, very fortuitous in winning the Formula E Championship. Again, not taking away from it, he still did it. And again, you have to be in it to win it, and he'd do more than I could ever do in a Formula E car. It's just, I found it very surprising. And it transpires, I was right in my surprise that Nick de Vries got a Formula 1 drive, because admittedly he hasn't been given loads of time to prove his worth, but he's been convincingly beaten by Yuki Tsunoda in the sister car at AlphaTauri. And yeah, so they've decided to give Danny Rick a shot. They've nothing to lose. The AlphaTauri is, from the looks of it, probably it's up there with both the Haas and the Alfa Romeo, but it seems to be probably the shittest car in the grid this season. It just doesn't seem to have any race pace. So like, yeah, Nick has been quite frequently the last. If he finishes, he's been last. That's if he finishes. He's had a few accidents along the way. So yeah, look, they've nothing to lose by putting Danny Rick in. I think it's partly going to be a bit of a test bed to see, one, how he stacks up against Yuki, and then how Yuki stacks up against him. If Yuki beats him convincingly, it's going to look great for Yuki, and will only increase his chances of possibly getting a go in the top team. But then the same goes for Danny Rick too, because Sergio Perez is definitely on thin ice. Thankfully, Max is so dominant. Well, I say thankfully for Red Bull, Max is so dominant. He's going to walk both the drivers and constructors championship probably single-handedly. And because Red Bull are so far ahead, Perez will probably be able to do enough to keep himself in second place. Although I think, is it Alonso's third? I don't think he's that far behind him. But the performance gap between Max and Checo, which wasn't massive to begin with, is just getting bigger and bigger. And his performances in qualifying are doing him no favours, especially come race day. So I'd say, yeah, Perez is on thin ice. So this half season for Danny Rick is going to be an assessment for both him and Yuki to possibly replace Perez, unless Perez manages to pull out something special over the rest of the season. Anyway, I've rambled on again about a topic way longer than I should have. But it's going to be very interesting to play out. So it's with immediate effect. There's no Formula 1 race this weekend, although there is 4 races in July. It's a 5-weekend month, so there's a gap this weekend. Next race is Hungary. Hungary has been a good stomping ground for Danny Rick over the years. I think he's won there. He's won there at least once, if not twice. And he goes well. It's a very different track to what we've just had at Silverstone. It's a tight, twisty, high downforce track. So we shall see. Interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not going to bog on too much about the season, because there must be 6 or 7 races that have happened since I last spoke to you all. I'll talk a little bit about Silverstone, mainly just because the biggest kind of upset, I wouldn't say upset, no, that's the wrong word. The biggest kind of the highlight of the weekend was the upturn in performance from McLaren. Lando Norris qualified second, and he finished second, which was great to see. Everybody loves Lando. He briefly took the lead. He took the lead at the start from Max and led for several laps. But then obviously Max then eventually got the lead back, and there was no stopping him once he got in the lead. But a very convincing second place from Lando, especially like there was a safety car, and after the safety car, Lando was on hard tyres, and he had Lewis Hamilton behind him on softs, and Lewis couldn't get by Lando, and Lando held on to second. The McLaren was just, look, it was quick all weekend. Oscar Piastri, the rookie from Australia, his teammate, he qualified third. He got shafted by the safety car. He should have finished third, really. Because he pitted just before the safety car. So those who didn't manage to, well, only one car jumped him, but Lewis Hamilton managed to jump him in the safety car and got third place, which the Brits were delighted about. 2 Brits on the British Grand Prix podium. But yeah, the car was competitive. Now again, we'll see what it's like at Hungary, which is going to be a very different track, but it seemed to perform very well in the high speed corners. There's been a few people being like, oh my god, how McLaren turned it around so fast. Because I think they've managed to more than double their points haul from before Silverstone, with the results they got at the weekend. But there's been a few people going like, this is very strange. They must be cheating. What are they doing? Blah blah blah. But if we go back to pre-season when the cars were launched, McLaren were very vocal and very honest and vocal at the car launch that they realised from their data that we got this wrong. So they knew even before they hit the track for testing that they'd made mistakes in the design of the car, and they'd already started working on big improvements and updates. And they said it was going to be in and around Silverstone before those updates were going to come through, and that their performance would turn around. So this has been in the pipeline, and they've had several months to work on it. So it's not like they just, rushed through an upgrade over the last couple of races, brought it through to Silverstone and bolted it on, and boom, all of a sudden the car has turned round. They knew their car was bad at the beginning of the season, started working on it before the cars hit the track, and they've been working on it for several months. So I'm not super surprised. It's still a huge jump, and we'll see if it's going to work on every circuit. But yeah, McLaren, they done good. They done good at Silverstone. Oh God, I'm rambling on way too much. What else do I say about the Formula 1? I'm not going to go into too much detail, as I said, about races that have gone before. Look, Max is running away with the championship. It's only a matter of time now before he's officially crowned. I read some sort of statistic. He could finish second place for the rest of the season, even with Perez winning all the rest of the races, and still win the championship. That is how far ahead he is. There's a sanitation truck driving towards me in a suspicious manner. I hope he doesn't come over and have some sort of awkward chat with me. He ain't the law. A Fuso, which is obviously an offshoot of Mitsubishi, because it has a Mitsubishi badge on it as well. Anyway, where was I? Yes, sorry. I won't go into it because, as I said, there's a couple of races to come. I'll probably talk about those races in upcoming podcasts if I manage to keep the train going. But more so, the mid-season break is coming up, and I'll probably do a mid-season review. I made some predictions pre-season as to how everyone would do. I haven't looked back at them since, but I will do come the mid-season chitter chat. As far as I'm aware, I've been pretty on point with my predictions, but we'll get into that at a later date. What I will say is I did actually attend the Spanish Grand Prix a few weeks ago. A friend was very courteous and had a spare ticket, and at the 11th hour asked me did I want to go, and how can you say no to that? It was the bank holiday weekend as well, so there was no excuse not to. It not in a season that hasn't exactly been a firecracker. It was a dull race in itself. Max ran away with it, and then it was just a bit of a DRS train race. The Spanish Grand Prix generally, I don't have a wealth. I've only been to one of the race previously, which was Austria last year, which was fantastic, which I won't go into too much detail on, but they put on a great spectacle. There was lots of support races. There was F2, F3, there was the Porsche Super Cup, there was demo runs of old F1 cars, there was an air display, and all the facilities. One thing I liked about it is that all the facilities there, it hasn't yet anyway fallen into the trap of the increased popularity of F1 and kind of got a bit too big for its boots and tried to become exclusive and flashy. It's still very kind of grassroots in its feeling. You camp, there's shitty cheap food, which is kind of what you want when you're just roughing it in a tent. But the facilities are good, blah blah. I'm getting too much deep. Austria was very, very good. Now, don't get me wrong, any Formula 1 race, any motor race event I would go to and enjoy, and I had a great time. It was a great weekend. But just traffic getting in and out of the track was absolutely dreadful. The mapping in and around the circuit was absolutely nonsensical. And just there wasn't a whole lot going on other than the F2 was on. The F2 cars actually sound so much better than the Formula 1 cars, which is saying a lot because neither of them sound great. But something that doesn't come across on the TV with the F2 cars is you hear the pops and bangs, but there's a lot more wastegate and kind of turbo whistle that you don't hear on the TV. Anyway, by the point. So there was the F2 race. I think that was it. There was very little else going on, and then you had the Formula One race. Which, don't get me wrong, we're there for the Formula One. The Formula One is the main event. But just going again off of Austria, they keep you entertained while there's no track action going on, and then there was a lot of track action, be it both competitive and just demonstrations and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't think I'd rush back to the Spanish Grand Prix. It's never been the most exciting race, even in the crazy seasons. Like, okay, you had stuff like Max Verstappen winning his first Grand Prix back in 2016 during the Mercedes dominance, because the two Mercedes drivers took themselves out. But again, that was just kind of a first lap chaos, which caused that strange result. But generally, it's because the teams have so much data. They have testing there, and it's just like it's not really a track that's set up for modern Formula One cars anymore. Overtaking's not great at it, and just the whole organisation of the Grand Prix was just it just felt a bit half-hearted. It kind of felt like they were resting on their laurels. Like, yeah, we have the Formula One, deal with it. You get in, you find your way around, and we're not going to lay out the red carpet for you. Just you do your thing and then fuck off. But I'm very thankful that I got the opportunity to go. I still really enjoyed it, and great thanks to my friend for giving me the opportunity to go. It was great fun. We went 2 and 4 to the track in a GR Yaris, which is a fucking fantastic car. Brilliant. Only other thing I'll say as well, I said I wasn't going to talk too much about Formula 1, although I've been talking for about fucking 6 hours now at this point. I'm at 36 minutes. The only thing I have to bring up, the Miami Grand Prix, and not so much about the race itself, but just that absolute cringe-worthy nonsense that went on before the race, with fucking LL Cool J announcing each driver as they came out from a smoky backdrop, a la Stars in Their Eyes. It was just painful to watch. It seems to be things they're kind of only doing at American rounds, which is fine. But yeah, it was terrible. So less of that. If you didn't see it, just Google it and have a look on YouTube. And cringe and wince. If you're into cringe type humor, like stuff like The Office and stuff like that, yeah, it's that kind of vibe. What else have I done? Really, I'm not going to go into the weeks and months of shit I've seen, because there's too much and it's been too many weeks. I was in Amsterdam a few weeks ago, and like a lot of other mainland European cities, you always see stuff that you just don't see here in Ireland. Yeah, Amsterdam had loads of great stuff. They really do love a nice estate car. One of the first things I saw was an E39 B10 Alpina estate. Fantastic. Just loads of great stuff just parked up on the side of the road you just don't see. Again, I won't go into all of it. If you want to see, just go onto my stories and stuff on Instagram. car_nosaur, CAR_ NOSAUR on Instagram, if you don't already follow me, which I'm sure you probably do or don't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah, and while I was there as well, I went to the Lumen. I think that's how you pronounce it. LOUWMAN. I think that's how it's spelled. The Lumen Museum, which isn't actually in Amsterdam itself. It's in the Hague. But again, you can get to it. It's like a 40 minute train ride from Amsterdam Central to the Hague. I'm gonna have to open the door or something. It's very warm. It is, albeit it's overcast. It's a stuffy, warm summer's day here in Dublin. Yeah, if you're in Holland, or like Holland's not a big country. Doesn't matter where you're in Holland. If you're in Holland or the surrounding areas, I'd highly recommend going to the Lumen Museum. Even if you have people with you who are not car people, it's in a kind of like a stately. I don't know if you'd never necessarily call it a stately home, but it's this lovely stately building with these lovely surrounding gardens, and it kind of just it's a private collection that's been accumulated over the years by the Lumen family, and it goes from the absolute inception of the car up to, like, I wouldn't say modern day so much, but up until like at least the 80s. And yeah, you go, like, the way you go through the museum, it goes through a timeline, and like some of the really old stuff that they have, like late 19th century stuff, steam powered stuff, combustion powered stuff. It's not even restored, so it's as is. It's fascinating. But it goes through. They have loads of they have like old concept cars and just beautifully designed. I won't go through everything that's there. I'd highly recommend you visit it. As I said, I don't think it was too expensive. I think it might be £12 entry or something like that. But it's because it's kind of like the full history of the car from the late 19th century up to the late 20th century. It kind of coincides with the history of the world as well, through the motor car. It's fascinating. It's a brilliant museum. Highly recommended if you're in the area. Anything else? The Herbert Park car show was on just last weekend. Again, I'm not going to go into full details as to what was there. Go into my Instagram or go into any Irish Instagram account, or even just go into Instagram and look up Herbert Park. You'll see endless photos of the stuff that was there. Loads of great stuff, loads of high-end stuff, from supercars to sports cars to just run-of-the-mill, old stuff like 2CVs and such. There was an M2 kit car to make it look like a Chance Stradale, but you could spot it from a mile away. A great event, especially now, like stuff like the Tearing Your Car show, which has been postponed yet again. It hasn't been on for several years. It's kind of like it's one of the few in a park on some grass car shows in Ireland that's or in Dublin at least anyway, that's worthy of your attendance. And it gets some great stuff, some stuff you just don't ever see, some very rare stuff, some very high end stuff. Like last year, this year as well, like the timing of it, even though it was in was it late June, early July? Was it the first weekend in July or was it the last weekend in June? Anyway, time of year where the weather should be absolutely spectacular, but it was just overcast and quite rainy, because yes, that is how the Irish summer works. So I'll talk about some car stuff as well. Again, I can't go through everything that was released, launched, cancelled, whatever over the last 10 weeks, but just stuff that's been happening recently. So actually just today, Caterham, them of the would they still call it the Caterham 7? Anyway, the Caterham only make one car, just several variants of the one car that we all know and love. The car that originally started life as the Lotus 7, and they've evolved the same idea into some crazy batshit stuff with power to weight ratios of close to 700 horsepower. Anyway, they released a concept called the Project V. I don't know if that's Project V or Project 5, being a Roman numeral maybe, but it's an electric sports car. They've designed it in conjunction with Yannerly, who are another small, are they British? But anyway, a small sports car manufacturer, small lightweight sports car manufacturer, who brought out a thing a few years ago, which the name of which I can't explain, but kind of a retro, modern, small rear-wheel drive sports car. So you can kind of see the design influences anyway from Yannerly in this Project V thing. But the thing is, it's a concept at the moment, but it's an EV concept from Caterham. It's a good looking car. Look it up. They're a bit scant on the actual details of it, and whether it'll be an actual production car is yet to be seen. You'd have to assume it is. It looks production ready. So I'm going to assume we'll see a production version of this in not too distant future, because Caterham even showcased an electric version of the 7 a few weeks back as well, which they said wasn't going to go into production, but the drivetrain, they said, is something that will probably be seen in a car going forward, which I assume will be this Project V thing. But look that up. Interesting. So we haven't yet really seen a proper EV sports car as yet. While I am not exactly excited about an electric sports car future, it kind of feels like it's an inevitable future. Although, as I mentioned earlier, maybe synthetic fuels will save the day for us yet. We shall see. What else has come out? Aston Martin have been on a bit of a roll. Obviously, the Formula 1 team have been doing great guns. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because I'll touch on Formula 1 at a later date. But they've released two things recently. So there's the DB12, which will obviously replace the DB11. Evolutionary rather than a revolutionary design, but a good looking car. Aston tend to make good looking cars. I can't really think of a ugly Aston Martin. There are some, obviously, but for the most part, Aston Martin make good looking cars. Will I ever own an Aston Martin? I'm not too sure. I really do love the first generation. When I say first generation, but the V8 Vantage of the early to mid 2000s. I think it's a fantastic looking car, and they've always kind of appealed to me. A manual V12 would be an interesting prospect. Getting off topic, but the DB12 seems to be a good step forward from what I've read of those who have driven it on the DB11. It seems to be dynamically a good steer. They very much improved the interior. Trust Lawrence Stroll to come along and turn around Aston, who were going through a very rocky patch there until he came along. He's really kind of turned around the company in the last 12 months. Interesting. Again, like, I suppose, what would his closest rival be? Like, would I have one over a 911? It's kind of a different prospect. In the Ferrari camp, like, there's the Portofino, which is probably its close rival because it's a V8. Would I have one over a Portofino? Maybe. It's a better looking car. Would I have it over a Roma? I suppose the Roma is probably in a different bracket. It's a V12. Because as far at the moment anyway, Aston Martin are saying this DB12, despite the name, will be V8 only. And the Roma is at a higher price point. I suppose it's Aston Martin kind of sitting in a middle ground, all on their own. But look, it's certainly. I don't think any of us would want to see Aston Martin disappear, and it seems to be heading in the right direction. And the DB12 seems to be the beginning of that new direction of joy and delight. Ramble. The other thing that Aston Martin released just yesterday was the thing called the Velour, which is a terrible name. I know they like naming their cars with V's for the most part, even though the DB line is not V at all. I'm sure there's some backstory to using the name Velour, but it just reminds me of the tacky, fluffy material that has often lined the seats of 1970s cars, and also the tracksuits worn by the mafia and teenage girls who have the word "juicy" written across their backside. But yeah, Velour. That's it's not a great name. It's a limited run car that they're doing. The design, the pictures they released are all very kind of low light and not very good to judge. It kind of looks like that Victor, which again, another terrible name for a car, one-off special thing they did for someone a couple of years ago, which I'm sure you all remember. Kind of has hints of that in it. I'm going to wait and judge fully on the aesthetics until I see it. I think it's going to be at Goodwood this weekend, so we might get some proper photos of it. But anyway, it's on the same architecture as the DB and current Vantage, whatever that's called. But it's going to have the V12, which the DB12 doesn't. The twin turbocharged 5.2 litre V12, if I'm getting my numbers correctly. Made it to a 6-speed manual gearbox, which has made it to a mechanical limited slip diff, limited to 100 units. Look, a manual V12 rear-wheel drive sports car, Aston Martin. You can't be negative about that. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I assume. Well, I don't know if any journalists will get their hands on it being such a limited run car. Great, whatever. I'll wait and judge on the aesthetic, but the mechanical package sounds interesting. We can't. I can't be cynical. Anyone who makes a manual gearboxed V12 engine sports car, it has to be celebrated. Ramble. Other limited run stuff. There's been another one-off Ferrari released. It's called the KC23. I believe it's based off of the underpinnings are 296. I'm not 200% sure. They didn't go into too many specific details because it being a one-off, they don't have to. But it's I would say the 296 GT3 because it's a track only car. I assume they go track only for these one-offs at times because there's less homologation restrictions when you go for a track only car. If I was in the luxurious position of being able to commission a one-off Ferrari, I would probably go and get a road going version, a la Eric Clapton's one he got a few years ago, which I think was called the EC something or other. It was based on a 458 and kind of made it look like a BB. Getting off topic. This KC23, as far as I'm aware, I think it's got the twin turbo V6 on the chassis from the 296 GT3. It's got like active aero. It's got wheels for the track, and then it's got wheels that you can put on it just for display purposes. You can take the wing off for when you're not on track, and then the active aero, goes back inside. So it's got a nice clean. It's a strange design. Personally, it's not a design I would have signed off on. But it's a one-off though, so whoever commissioned it, I'm sure they love it. I think I would. You'll have to look it up yourself. Obviously, I can't quite describe it. You'll have to just look it up. It has hints of that Daytona thing they brought out recently. It's just the profile proportions look a bit. It's an odd looking car. I'm not saying I dislike it. I'm just not sure if I like it. If I again was in the enviable position of commissioning a one-off Ferrari, I think I'd go for something a little bit more elegant. I'd like to try and strike that balance. I wouldn't want to go retro, but an elegant modern design, which brings me on nicely as a segue into something that is kind of like a nice elegant, slightly retro but modern design, and something that's kind of flown under the radar. I haven't heard too many people talk about it, but it's a car called the AIM EV Sport 01. Now again, it's an electric sports car and it's only in concept form so much, but just going on the aesthetics alone, I think it's a very pretty looking car, and they've struck the balance, like I said, between retro and modern very, very well. Look it up, AIM EV Sport 01. I believe the guy who designed certainly was part of the design team for the I'm talking about technical design here, the R35 Nissan GT-R, which obviously is a legendary car in itself, and he also has history in building V10s for LMP cars, which is good. Speaking of LMP cars, actually, I should have mentioned this when I was talking motorsport earlier. Another thing that happened whilst I've been gone was the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is part of the World Endurance Championship. And obviously, as I've discussed before, as I'm sure you're all aware, the World Endurance Championship is kind of at the beginning of hopefully a purple patch, with the current regulations that they've brought in, the LMH, LMDH. There's two. Anyway, the top class can have two types of cars. You can have a ground-up design that you do yourself, and then there's LMDH, which allows people from IMSA in America to get involved. Blah blah. Anyway. So there's loads of manufacturers have come back. Toyota are there with their own car. They're doing the version that they build themselves, as are Ferrari, as are Peugeot, and then you have people like Porsche who've come back in with privateer teams. They're doing the other route. They're doing bought-in chassis, blah blah. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the technical details. It's all a bit confusing. But anyway, so unsurprisingly, because Toyota never left, they went from the LMP prototype era. They only started winning when everyone else disappeared, Audi and Porsche. Those lads disappeared. Toyota won because they had no competition essentially. Then they they never went away, so they were the first ones to come back in for this new prototype era. And because they've kind of got a leg up on everyone, they've been dominating this season, bar Le Mans. So Ferrari are back. It's the first time a factory Ferrari team have been in the top flight of world endurance in 50 years, and well, they won Le Mans, which is a great story. It was great to see. It was this, if you want, the secondary car, the number 51 car that won. It was a crazy race. I'm not going to go into the full details of the 24 hours of Le Mans. It was I only saw, I had to dip in and out of it because I was away. It was actually on while I was in Amsterdam, but I caught the start and I caught the end, and I dipped in and out once or twice during the race. Yes, they won, and look, you can't take away from the fact they won, and it's a great fairy tale story. Ferrari winning Le Mans back after 50 years, brilliant. However, there was a controversial thing that we can't ignore, and it's the balance of performance. And the balance of performance worked in their favour, and it kind of hindered Toyota when it came to Le Mans. I'm not going to get into too much detail about it, because it is what it is. Those are the rules. It's not Ferrari's fault, but it's something that I think it needs to be looked at, because this has happened before. If you go back and look at Ford, when they came back in with the Ford GT a few years ago, they kind of sacrificed performance in other rounds of the championship to give them a leg up for Le Mans, which is kind of what happened here now with the Ferrari thing at Le Mans. But anyway, look, it was great to see Ferrari win. It was a fairy tale story, and Toyota are undoubtedly going to win the overall championship. And look, as I said, it's probably the beginning of a purple patch. Hopefully the grid will tighten up. Like Peugeot were on the podium. Monza, the 6 hours of Monza was on the weekend. Peugeot, who've been doing pretty piss poor, managed to get on the podium in Monza. Porsche, who, as I said, are one of the teams who are going down the other route of not doing a ground up car, whichever one that is. I think it's the LMDH. I'll get the details again. They've, obviously Porsche have a great history in the World Endurance Championship, going back to fucking the 1960s. They've been having an awful time of it, so hopefully they catch up. Next season we'll have BMW, who are competing in IMSA this year, but they'll be in Le Mans next year. Also a car that we're going to see at the Festival of Speed, which I'm going to dip in and out of at the weekend. I'd love to be there. It's the 30th anniversary, but anyway, something for next year. I'm not going to get into that. Lamborghini are going to be coming into the top flight for the first time, and their car is going to be launched at the Festival of Speed. We have teams like Glickenhaus, there's Van Wall, Cadillac. I'm sure I'm missing someone, but in Le Mans next year there could be 30 cars in the top flight, and that's not before we talk about LMP2, which is very competitive, and GTE AM, which is I want to say it's very competitive, but Corvette actually managed to claim the championship at Monza, so that championship's already wrapped up, and I think there's still 2 rounds to go. Anyway, that's sorry, I got sidetracked by talking about World Endurance Championship after talking about that AIM EV. I'm getting very rambly now, and I'm probably going to have to start wrapping up, because I've been recording for almost an hour. So I'm going to quickly ramble off some other things that have come out recently. Koenigsegg Jumeirah, a car that we got shown probably about a year ago, or maybe more than that, because I remember it was supposed to be launched at the Geneva Motor Show. That was then cancelled due to the COVID. So the Jumeirah, it's Christian von Koenigsegg, who forever, him and his team and his company are constantly pushing the technical boundaries of what's capable in what he calls the hypercar, or the mega car sector, as he calls it. But so basically what he wanted to do is he wanted to take what he's learned from building all his other hypercars, the Jesko and the whatever they're called, all the cool Koenigseggs over the last few years, two-door sports cars. And anyway, he wants to make a 4-door mega car that can take 4 cabin-sized cases and fit 4 grown adults comfortably, with all the accoutrement that you'd want to go on a big journey. So when it was initially launched, it was going to have hybrid power, an electric motor up front combined with a 3-cylinder free valve combustion engine, which had 600 odd horsepower, and then mated with the electric motor. All in, it was going to have something like 1500 horsepower. He's now come back with the production version. He's made big advances in the electric motor. It's got some crazy name like the Black motor or something crazy like that, which has way more power, it's more compact, blah blah blah. And he'll still offer it with the 3-cylinder engine, and it'll still have like a combined output of 1500 something horsepower. But in the interim, they've also managed to take the V8 engine that they've been using for the last few years and managed to package it into the Gemera as well. So you'll be able to get a V8 option, which will have a combined power output of 2,300 horsepower or something like that, which is batshit crazy, but whatever. If it works, what an incredible car. A four-seater car with 2,300 horsepower with a V8 engine, 4-wheel drive, will sit 4 adults comfortably with all your luggage, and amazing. If I was one of the mega rich, I would have put my name down immediately once I heard the news about this thing. I think it's going to be an amazing car. I have a lot of time for Christian von Koenigsegg and the Koenigsegg company, and I think it's brilliant. Probably not the greatest looking car in the world, not ugly by any means, but the fact that it's a thing at all is brilliant. And yeah, I'm almost lost for words when it comes to it. Okay, so I've talked about that now. Hang on, I'm going to have to really ramble off now because I've been talking for way too long. The next M5, BMW have said there will be a touring version. Obviously, that's coming off the back of the success of the M3 touring. Sure, we'll see. I just think, peak BMW, like Volkswagen, I think is in the past, on a subjective level anyway, at least. What else have we got? Ferrari, I should have talked about this when I was talking about that one-off Ferrari. The newest XX model, which is kind of the limited run super versions of Ferraris. Obviously, we've had the Enzo FX, and then there was the 599 XX. They did one for the LaFerrari as well, didn't they? They've all been super performance track only versions of Ferraris. So they've come out with a new one. It's an SF90 version, the SF90 XX. Again, a super duper performance version of the SF90, which is a car that hasn't been lacking in power anyway. But there's one key word in the name of this one, and it's Stradale. So yes, this is the first XX model that'll actually be road legal. Am I interested? Of course I am. Am I really interested? I don't know. I don't know. The proof will be in the pudding. I'll wait until people drive it and tell me how good it is. But I know the SF90 is just a car. Again, a peak Ferrari, peak car generally, I think is in the past. Although as much as I really like the 296 GTB, but the SF90, I don't know. It's just a car that Ferrari brought out, which technically is obviously, undoubtedly, it's I'm sure it's amazing, but I don't know. It's a car that just does nothing for me. Anyway, got to keep rambling here. The only other thing, the last thing I'll talk about car-wise, Singer have brought out their latest iteration of super duper resto mod Porsche. It's the DLS Turbo, which is kind of an homage to the 934-5 of the 1970s, the race car. So obviously it's a turbo version of the DLS, the design lightweight, which they brought out a year or two ago, which is a cool car. Pushing the boundaries, I think, of the styling that Singer have become famous for, and the kind of resto mod styling. But a cool car with a 4-litre naturally aspirated engine, which they worked with Williams to create. This DLS Turbo, I think they've pushed it a bit too far. Like, undoubtedly, it's going to be a great car. Look, they're not going to make a bad car. It's just the people involved love cars too much. But just from a styling perspective, I think they've gone too far. The thing that I think everyone loved about Singers is the design cues were subtle. You had to be a car person to really know it's not just an old Porsche. It's something a little bit extra. Whereas this DLS Turbo thing, they've kind of gone a bit too wild, I think, with the styling. You can see obviously all the homage touches to the 9345, which obviously wasn't a subtle car in itself, but it wasn't a subtle car because of function. Whereas I think this is more form over function in the styling. And I think they've gone too far. Okay, rambled on way too long. Where am I at now? An hour and 5 minutes. So a quick ramble off, as I normally do, with a classified find of the week. It's a 1993 Renault Twingo. I don't know why I'm telling everyone else about this, because it's a car I should buy. It's 2950. I believe it's in Kildare. Green 1993 Twingo, so it's classic status. And it being a 1993, it's the pre-facelift, so it's got the old interior, which is way more funky. It's a funky kind of minty green colour. It's missing its hubcaps, which is a bit annoying, because I don't think you'd find hubcaps for a Twingo particularly easily. But then again, maybe you would, because there are still a shitload of them on the continent. My only thing I don't like about it, well, one, it's kind of pricey, but find another. It's on ZB plates, which is something I wouldn't do. It's been recently imported from Portugal, so it won't be rusty, which will be good. ZB plates, I just don't. They're black and silver ZB plates is on as well. But anyway, small thing. Look it up. It's on Done Deal. 1993 Renault Twingo in green. That's my classified find of the week. My YouTube channel I'm going to recommend. It's called B, just the letter B Sport. But it actually stands for Buchanan Motorsport. And so if you type in Buchanan Motorsport, you should get it. It's a German guy who is a former motorsport engineer, and he makes these quite nerdy. This is a very nerd level YouTube channel now, but he makes these videos about motorsport cars from like the 80s and 90s, but goes into some real interesting technical details and stuff you just probably wouldn't have known. His most recent one was on the DTM Calibra, and then he also did a fantastic one on the Zack Speed Viper. Look that up. Really interesting stuff if you're a car bore like me, especially a motorsport lover. And then finally, the music I'm going to recommend this week. I'm going to go with an album again. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, but I'm a diehard fan of this band. Queens of Stone Age have brought out a new album. It's called In Times New Roman. If you're a Queens of Stone Age fan, you'll absolutely love it. If you're not, at least give it a go. But really good album from Queens of Stone Age. They're coming here in November. Arguably one of the best live bands currently still rocking. They're coming in November. I think it's probably sold out in the 3 Arena, but look, if you want to go, where there's a will, there's a way. I'd highly recommend it. They're unbelievable. As I'm talking very fast right now, I've been talking for too long, very rambly. I think this is at least better than the last podcast I did before I stopped for a while. I'm going to try and keep with it. I'll try and do one week by week. It's finding time, which is the difficult bit, because one, obviously, it's taking over an hour now just to record this. Then I have to fucking chop it up and post it and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm rambling. If you have listened to this, God bless you. I love you. And if you're going to stick with me, that's even more heartwarming. I'll try and keep it up. Going to stop talking now. I hope you stay well, be well. I love you, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.